हम सर दीन दयाल ना तुम सर, आप पते यार क्या की जय। बचनी तोर मोर मन मानै, जन को पूरन दीजै। आओ बल बल जाओ रामैया कारणे, कारण कवन अबोल रहा। बहुत जन्म बिछड़े थे माधो, ए जन्म तुम्हारे लिखे। करब दास आस लग जीवो, चिर पयो दर्शन देखे। बहुत जन्म बिछड़े थे माधो, ए जन्म तुम्हारे लिखे। करब दास आस लग जीवो, चिर पयो दर्शन देखे। वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा, वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह। संगत जी, deep within each and every one of us, there's a hidden memory of who we really are. Our soul, in its purest form, somewhere deep within it has a memory of its true home. It remembers who it is. What does it remember? It remembers that it's the light of the one divine. And deep within us all, we have this understanding of our true essence and our purpose. When we come into the Sangha, when we hear the words of the Shabad, our scriptures, regardless of our traditions, regardless of what faith we belong to, what denomination we belong to, what we believe in, but when we focus on those true scriptures that come from authentic sources, what happens is that we then expose to an echo for that soul. That soul hears a faint voice of the divine. And that voice is telling the soul to remember who you are. Remember who you are. That voice is speaking to us. It's telling us to come back home. Come back home. This is why the great masters, the gurus, the messengers, the saints, they've explained to us what that longing of the soul, they've explained to us what that longing means, what it feels like, what the soul is crying for. In the lines that we just sung, the great saint Bhagat Ravidas Ji is saying, "Bodh janam bichhde the madhu, e janam tumhare likhe, kar Ravidas aas lag jeevo, chir peo darshan dekhe." They're saying for many lives, countless lives have been separated from you. But this life I'm dedicating to you alone. So Ravidas says, my whole hope, my lasting breath, my whole hope of life is you. And then the crucial thing they say at the end, Chir peo darshan dekhe. It's been so long since I've seen you. It's been so long since I've had your vision, that I've been able to perceive you, to experience you. Where is this coming from? Bhagavad Ravidas is remembering that he was once a part of the divine. He is one. His soul is one. And his soul internally is remembering that time when it was in union with the one. And feeling those intense pains of this separation. This life is a life of unification. In this life, Bhagavad Ravidas is saying, I am traveling back home. Today, Sangatji, we will try and speak about that process of unification. that process of liberation, which the fourth Guru, Guru Ram Das Ji, has explained in their Shabad, in the verses of the Lama. The Lama, incidentally, is the wedding ceremony for the Sikh. But in this, Guru Ram Das Ji is explaining the four distinct stages for us to experience on this path of liberation. Many have described liberation in their own way, according to their own understandings of it. And our understanding of liberation, or mukti, or moksha, as it's referred to, will differ slightly depending on who we are, what background, where we're from. Some of us have got this idea that liberation is something that comes after death, and when our sins are completely washed away. Some think that liberation is to be free of all the emotional pains and physical pains of this world. Some think that liberation comes when we rise above our temptations. Some think that liberation means to completely just to disappear in the divine. Some think that liberation is a paradise, a heaven. Some think that liberation is a reward. Some think that liberation is reuniting this soul, the Atma, back with the super soul, the Paramatma, when we come back home. In order to understand liberation, Sangat, and also to give us an idea of why we might even want liberation, the Gurus have given us this example of pure love. They describe this liberation as a union of pure love. And for this reason, the Gurus have described liberation with the image of that we're all the brides of the divine. And we're looking forward to that wedding day, that ultimate wedding day when we're going to be united with our husband. The moment where we can be joined with our beloved. And they've given us this imagery in order to explain for these minds that are rooted in this world about what liberation might actually feel like. So where we've been separated for so long, where we have countless pains and torment, that wedding day, that eventual union symbolizes an end of that ongoing suffering, that end of being alone, that end of being incomplete, to finding that completeness, to finding that true self, that true identity. For any seeker on this path, Sangat, we have to be completely honest with ourselves. We have to ask us this question. The first question we have to ask is, do we actually want liberation? Is it something that we're actually looking to achieve? Do we actually want to be free from this world and unite with the divine? Because all our scriptures are talking about that divine moment. All our scriptures are talking about that particular point when we're unified, when we achieve that paradise, when we achieve that liberation. The question is, all the effort that we're putting in, do we actually want liberation itself? Realize this, Sangat, liberation, though, it's not something that's going to come after death. Let's just talk about that now. We often think that liberation is something that happens when this physical body dies. And most of our understanding of heavens, paradises, and any liberation, any mukti, it revolves around this idea that this comes when this body dies. But the Gurus have told us about freedom that is liberating in itself. The ultimate goal of liberation is to achieve and experience it in the here and now, while we're still alive. I'll give you an example. When someone has died, Sangat, we say they've gone. But what's actually gone? The body's laying in front of us. They're still here. But what's disappeared? It's the soul that's within that body that's traveled on. And then imprinted on that soul are all the experiences, all the impressions, everything else that's been painted on the canvas of that mind. As Guru Nanak Dev Ji says in Japji Sahib, Kar kar karna likh le jao. Wherever we experience, wherever we thought, wherever we created in our mind, is recorded on our soul. We might even forget it, but the soul has an imprint of its own. And this is what we then take along with us in our next experiences. Deep within us, there are lines upon lines of memories and experiences that travel with us. And none of these disappear until we resolve them in our mind. And equally, somewhere within those experiences, somewhere within those lines, there's also a memory of our true home, where we've actually come from. Chir pe darshan dekhe, as Bhagavad Ravidas says. It's been so long since I've seen you. That's a memory of that time. And then where we end up, Sangatji, those future lives, those future experiences, they all depend on those dominant thoughts, those emotions that we retain. So imagine it this way. When we fall asleep at night, we wake up in the very same place the next morning. And in the same way, when we die, when we leave this physical body, we simply wake up somewhere else with the same mental impressions, those perceptions, those thoughts, those emotions, those experiences that we stored from the past, but just in a new body. And then we carry on. This is why, Sangatji, this liberation that we're looking to achieve, if we achieve it right here, right now, while we're alive, that's the state we will be when we leave this physical body. But if we haven't achieved this liberation, if we haven't got an experience of it, if we don't even want it, it's not going to come later on. As the ninth Guru, Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji has told us, Sukh dukh jai par se nahi, lobh moh abman, kau nanak sun re mana, so moorat Bhagwan. One who's not touched by pleasure or pain, greed or emotional attachment, or ego and pride, says Nanak, listen, they are the very image of God. Ustit nindya nahi je kanchana lo saman, kau nanak sun re mana, muktataye tai jaan. One who is beyond praise and slander, who looks upon gold and iron alike, says Nanak, listen, know that such person is liberated. And then they say, Har kasog jaake nahi, vairi meet saman, kau nanak sun re mana, muktataye tai jaan. That person who's not affected by pleasure or pain, they look at friend and enemy as one and the same. Says Nanak, know that such a person is liberated. Meaning, that person who's reached a complete stability of mind, where they're not affected by the high and lows of emotions, they've controlled their thoughts, their aspirations, their desires. They've come to a place where they're seeing one in everyone. They are the ones who are truly liberated, and then they will fall into that liberation later on. Let us now travel back, Sangatji, to the 14th century of India, in the holy city of Benares. This Sakhi illustrates these very points of liberation. In the holy city of Benares, there lived the saint Bhagat Kabir, who we've referenced many times here in the Sangat. Kabir was considered of low status, of low caste, and discrimination on the grounds of race and caste meant that he remained in poverty. He was never given the opportunity to even worship the divine. The temples, the religious establishments, all of these were closed to these people. The theory was that if you were low caste, you were not worthy of worship. But Kabir was a lover of the divine. And by focusing on the Shabad mantra of Ram, 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 he became one with Ram. The experiences of the Sakhis are longer this time. But in that, Bhagat Kabir Ji went into hiding one day just to observe what a guru at the time, Bhagat Ramanand, was doing. And there he observed Ramanandaji chanting the name Ram, and from there he adopted the mantra Ram. So much so that he chanted and chanted and chanted the word Ram, the mantra Ram. And the Gurbani says, Ram Kabira ek pe hai, koi na sake pachani. That by chanting Ram, 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 he became one with Ram. And Gurbani says, now the divine and Kabir have become one. Ram and Kabir have become one. No one could tell them apart. What's significant about the city of Banaras, Sangat, that even now there's a belief that if you're of a high status, if you're a high caste, and if you die in the city of Banaras, you automatically gain liberation. And even now you've got flocks of people who go to Banaras just to die. And they believe that if you go to Banaras, you'll automatically find a place in heaven. You automatically obtain that paradise. And Kabirji was observing everybody in Banaras, and he was observing all these spectacles, and he was saying, look, you spend all your life in frustrations, in judgments, in hatred, in jealousy, and then seek liberation in your last moments, like it's something that can be bought or it can be cheated. But near to Banaras, Sangatji, there's another town, the town of Magar. And in ancient times, it said that the god Shiva condemned this town of Magar. And they said, whoever dies in this town will experience the pains of hell. They will feel the wrath of hell. So as many people will be flocking to Banaras, you got that many people will be running away from Magar. Now, Kabirji spent his whole life in Banaras. It's where he lived, where he worked, where he brought up his family, where he meditated, where he had his Sangat, where the Sangat used to flock to him. It was where he raised his vibration. But as his body weakened, and it was evident that Kabir was approaching his physical death, Kabir done something astonishing. Packing up everything, he started walking to the city of Magar, where he eventually left his body and died in Magar. Kabir simply lived in the presence of the divine. And in that presence, he just returned. Kabir was telling us this, that practically liberation is a state of the mind. If you have it now, you will have it later. It's nothing to do with who you are. It's nothing to do with your status, nothing to do with the faith you belong to. Liberation, heaven, paradise, nirvana, saj, mukti is all a state of the mind. Many will tell you that liberation is only obtained through them. Many will tell you liberation is only given to a chosen few. Many will tell you that liberation is only for people of a selected path. No. Kabirji is showing that liberation is a state of the mind that's achieved with pure blessings of the divine. And this search for liberation will continue until the mind's desires have ended. When our mind is no longer looking at this world as a source of happiness, when our life is dedicated to the divine and the divine alone, at that point we've arrived at door of liberation, Sangat. How do we get to this door of liberation? And what are the stages of enlightenment? This particular discourse by Sir Bahadur Singh Ji has done beautifully, which you can find on the internet. Such beautiful ways they describe this. This is only a very limited summary of what they've shown us and what they've told us. From the understanding that Babaji have given, the understanding that Guru Sahib has given. Here, in these 4 stages of liberation, known as a Laavan, Guru Ram Das Ji is talking to us about those 4 distinct stages of liberation, so we can understand and evaluate where we are ourselves on this spiritual journey, on this spiritual marriage, on this union with the divine. In the first stage, in the first Laav, is known as Pravirti Karan. And in this first stage, we start a regular and constant spiritual practice. We put a load of effort into our meditation. We put a load of effort into our manifestation. We put a lot of effort into serving everyone around us. We're reading the scriptures continuously. We're attending retreats. We're adopting our own spiritual practice. And in this first stage, we're finding other like-minded people as well on this journey. At this first stage, Sangat, it's even more important to find those people that will guide you, that will nurture you, that will unite you with the divine. And this is what we refer to as Sangat, Sangat. It doesn't matter where you are on this journey, what even stage you are on this journey. The Sangat is of utmost importance. The soul needs to have that Sangat that can guide us. In this way, Bhagat Guru Ramdas Ji is telling us that this first stage is when we find that Sangat, when we're doing these actions. This first stage is effort and action based. Now, there are many spiritualists, there are many people on this path, this time. There are many that don't get past the actual stage because we can meditate, we can serve, we could dress as much as we want, but we have to be involved in that spiritual practice. This mind has to be involved in this spiritual practice. At this stage, we're only experiencing an outwardly expression of the divine. But the real magic is when we start to travel within, when the mind is attuned to what it's doing. And if the mind is not involved, then it's just a bodily action. There are many people who are meditating, doing yoga, doing all practice and manifestation, all sorts of pilgrimages. But the thing is, they will all talk about dimensionalizations, they all talk about eyes opening, they all talk about many different things, but really practically not experiencing anything at all. Despite all these actions, despite all these meditations, there's no one bit of difference in our lives. There's no one bit of difference in our character. These people are doing things from the body only, and they've not completed their first stage. Unfortunately, our churches, our temples, our mosques, our places of worship are full of these people who are just stuck at the first stage. But there are those whose mind starts to be involved. They start to adopt these practices. They start becoming a picture of who they are. And at this stage, they start removing all sorts of divine desires. Where their prayers move from desire to something to unconditional love, where it becomes a natural outpouring of the heart. That's where Sangat Ji, you complete that first stage, Guru Ramdas Ji says. Where a sweetness starts to be experienced. Sant Sang Antar Prabh Dita, Naam Prabhu Ka Laga Meetha. Where that name of the divine, where that simran, that meditation doesn't seem like a chore anymore. A sweetness starts to be experienced, both internally and externally. This is where we come to the end of the first stage. This is when the rituals have become a divine action. We then move to the second stage. In this second stage, Guru Ramdas Ji is telling us that all our fears that we have, those doubts that we have, all of these start to depart. Countless fears that we have, Sangat. We simply let them go. The fears of life, the fears of death, the fears of old age, the fears of losing loved ones, the fears of the body. Then after letting go of all these fears and doubts, we start to let go of our ego. This is all happening in the second stage. The ego and our fears, it was what's created a barrier between us and the divine. And this liberation that we seek will only come after a physical death, after we've achieved that ego death, after we've died in the Shabad. Forgetting these fears, forgetting these doubts, we come to a place of self-inquiry, where we start to control our desire-based decisions. We start to walk away from the needs of this body, Sangat. And this is where the first lines that we said with Guru Tegh Bahadur, where they say you start to control your eyes, you start to control your tongue, you start to control what you perceive with your ears. That's when we come to the state of samadhi. That's when we start to come to meditation. That's when we come to the door of liberation. And this is where we clear our negative emotions and the perceptions and ritual. When we come to the second stage, we begin to control these perceptions. We then have an encounter with the divine. This is where we start to really experience the divine itself. And this is known as the Anhadanad or the Shabad. Deep within us, there's a voice of the divine that's singing. And we've replicated that with external sounds. So the external sounds of singing, the prayers, the various instruments that we sing in Kirtan, the gong baths, the meditations, all these instruments, the saints, hearing these sounds, hearing what's happening internally, they try to externalize it. But for the first time, Sangatji, Guru Ram Das Ji is now telling us, we start to experience this amazing sound within us. Many spiritualists have confined it, and they've said to me how they start to experience the sound within them. In honesty, they've said this. In order to help others guide along this process, guide them on this path. They start talking about how all the outer ears are closing and the intensity of the Shabad they start to experience within themselves. Despite what's happening in their life, despite the physical pains that the body might be experiencing, the intensity to show that the Shabad is too great. And this is an experience that's happening with all of us. But for the first time, we're actually start to hear it. This becomes then the focus of our meditation, Sangatji. We're no longer focusing on the external sound. We're focusing on that Shabad that's happening within us, that resounding within us. Sometimes when I was sitting with Babaji, Baba Jaswant Singh, you sit with them and they couldn't hear anything that was happening outwardly. There was nothing wrong with their hearing. But they couldn't hear anything outwardly. They were lost in an internal resonance. And there they will say, look, we're hearing something within. And that's caught our attention. That's caught our focus. That's our meditation. We hear that voice of the divine as if someone's calling us from a distance. And our whole purpose is to try and get closer and closer and closer, to have that direct interaction with the divine. This then moves to the experience of the third stage. At this stage, nothing physical of this physical world provides us any contentment anymore. Nothing feels sweet anymore in this world. We're no longer influenced by those around us, and we simply let go of any of those thoughts, of those desires, those places, those interests, those things that we used to do just seem completely tasteless to us now. We live in this world, but we're not a part of this world. We'll do all the jobs, all the things that are dictated of this world, but we're not attached to it, nor do we have any enjoyment from it at all. This is because the mind has become free. It's broken away from these distractions. It's remaining in the present, and it's stopping itself from going to these various different destinations by just becoming still. This world then just doesn't become a source of happiness for it anymore. All it has is that intensity, that yearning to be one with the divine. Here is when we're completely surrendering the mind, letting go of all those attachments and frustrations of this world. So if we focus it in this way, Sangatji, just so we can track our own spiritual progression, the Guru explains this, that if we're still attached to this world, our families, our jobs, our temporary enjoyments, those that are based on our senses, if we're looking at this world for answers, then we're not at the third stage. Then if we still have fear of death, We still have fear of our physical pains of death. If we worry about our future, then we're not at the second stage either. And then if we simply don't have an interest in spirituality, if we haven't even started at any of our religious actions, then we're not at the first stage. So what is the fourth and final stage, Sangat? As explained, when you get to the full state, Sangat, quite surprisingly, you realize that actually the first three stages were actually not required. You could have easily just jumped straight to the full stage. Because this is all about the state of mind and its perceptions. And at the full stage, all our attachments, all our desires simply disappear. For even Sangatji, the idea of liberation has to disappear. So firstly, I said, we have to decide, do we actually even want liberation? Do we desire liberation? At the full stage, even that disappears. Even the desire to be liberated disappears. As Guru Arjan Dev Ji, the fifth Guru, tells us in the Sukhmani Sahib, Dharmi dharam kare gawave mange mokh dua. That the righteous, they waste their righteousness, they waste their awareness by asking for the door of their salvation. There was once a Muslim saint, a Sufi saint by the name of Rabia of Basra in Iraq. And she said something so beautiful. She goes, Allah, if I worship you for the fear of hell, burn me in that hell. If I worship you for the hope of paradise, exclude me from that paradise. Don't let me in. But if I worship you for your own sake, grudge me not your everlasting beauty. What happens is that everything becomes a divine moment, divine action. We have no desire for anything, not even for paradise. Even if we have the desire for paradise, for heaven, for liberation, that's an ego-based desire. Here, everything's dropped. When the mind realizes it's a light of the divine, it comes to realize its true origin. It realizes its true purpose. It realizes who and what it really is. Before, this path looked like a journey. We feel like we've had to say we're traveling to God, or we're having to find God. We also think the divine is somewhere so far away in the outer world. Up to now, everything has been an outward journey. But in this full stage of liberation, the mind realizes that everything's within us. Sab Govinda hai, Sab Govinda hai, Sab Govinda, Govinda bin nahi koi. Everything's divine, everything's divine, everything's divine. There's nothing that's not. Everything's within us. We were never separated from the divine. So that's why I'm saying, Sangatji, sometimes you can, if you come to this stage, you realize the first three stages were not required. Because you come to this point and realize you were never separated. You are the divine. The divine is within you. We are one. We've always been one. The challenge has just been to recognize that, to remember that. We have nothing to learn in that aspect. It's just to remember who and what we really are. To recognize that we are the divine means to shut the door of the senses, to pull down that curtain of ego and guard our hearts so we look deep within our home. At the full stage, Sangatji, there's no self. These saints are completely selfless. They're carefree. They love genuinely, compassionately. Their love is pure without condition and without thought. Just like blood pumps throughout the body. Just how we breathe without any thought, automatically. In the same way, our meditation, our chanting occurs naturally, automatically within us. This is the complete state of nishkamata, selflessness. Sangatji, this is a path that will start with our repeated actions and repeated manifestations. Those repeated actions will create our habits. Those habits will then become our nature. And then that nature becomes our reality. That reality then will take us to the door of liberation. If we wanted to understand and summarize this path very, very shortly, very, very quickly, it's simple. We could achieve this door of liberation, the saints have told us. We have to meditate, we have to serve, we have to do those actions. That's a given to take us deep within us. But if we drop that hatred, that jealousy, if we drop the slandering of other people, just those three things, within that, all the other things, we lose our desires, we lose our ego, just in these three things. If we drop our hatred, we drop our jealousy, we drop our slandering, those three things, then the ego dies, our hatred dies, our desires go, our passions go. And if we master those three things, Sangatji, just in this life, in this very moment, we will be able to experience and see and feel the divine, and we will achieve that state of liberation. This is a beautiful journey, a beautiful path, Sangatji, for those that wish to travel on it. And we're lucky that we have a beautiful Sangha that we can travel together, we can be guided on this journey itself. And with these words, Sangatji, thank you so much for your time, and I beg your forgiveness for the countless mistakes I made. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.